interesting here is the precedent we're following is the precedent that the Democrat FCC set when it came to Fox. There was a complaint lodged against Fox, and so they opened up a public proceeding on that, and we're simply applying that precedent.
Chairman Carr appears on Fox News to talk about the CBS investigation as well as a new one targeting radio giant Audacy. AM and All Vehicles Act advances in the Senate. REC opposes the law's digital loophole. Multi-million-dollar forfeiture imposed by the FCC for robocalls impersonating the FCC. Payola, public files, loud commercials, and more as we bring the Daily Digest to life right now.
REC, FCC Today, Peachy Bradley.
This is FCC Today, the podcast for Saturday, February 8, 2025. The investigation into the allegation of news distortion against CBS over the 60 Minutes interview with presidential candidate Kamala Harris continues. On Thursday, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr appeared on Fox News' Fox and Friends regarding the investigation.
This is a rare situation where we had extrinsic evidence that CBS had played one answer or one set of words and then swapped in another set. And CBS's conduct through this, frankly, has been concerning. Look, they just did an interview with Vice President Vance and immediately fully disclosed the unedited transcript. For some reason, they decided not to do that in this case. And so we've now opened a proceeding. We think it's in the public interest to allow people to participate and comment. And we're going to take this one step at a time at the FCC.
On Wednesday, the agency opened a docket to accept public comments on the matter. The agency opened the comment period in the interest of transparency and a demonstrated interest in this FCC matter. The FCC has also made available 2 unedited videos of raw footage that was provided by CBS of that interview. You can view those videos at recnet.substack.com. In response to this proceeding, Commissioner Ana Gomez calls it a fishing expedition, stating, "This action sets a dangerous precedent that threatens to undermine trust in the FCC's role as an impartial regulator. The FCC should stop trying to keep up with this administration's focus on partisan culture wars and return to its core focus of protecting consumers, promoting competition, and securing our communications networks." By the end of this week, the proceeding has already received about 120 comments. Comments in MB Docket 25-73 are due on March 7, with reply comments due by March 24, 2025. Public broadcaster KQED is reporting that the FCC is investigating Audacy, licensee of KCBS Radio San Francisco, claiming that the station disclosed details of enforcement activity by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Once again, Brendan Carr on Fox and Friends.
Here, this is really concerning. So what happened was you had ICE agents undercover doing operations in East San Jose, and part of the town known for violent gang activity. And you had this radio station broadcasting the live location, identifying the unmarked vehicles that they were in. And again, against the backdrop of Democrat leaders in Congress saying it's time for people to take fights to the street against Trump's agenda. So we have sent a letter of inquiry, a formal investigation into that matter. And they have just a matter of days left to respond to that inquiry and explain how this could possibly be consistent with their public interest obligations.
David Loy, legal director of the First Amendment Coalition, told KQED, quote, "People generally have the right to report this on social media and in print." He goes on to say that, quote, "It's troubling because it is possible the FCC is potentially being weaponized to crack down on reporting that the administration simply does not like." Neither KCBS nor Audacy has responded to KQED's requests for comment.
FCC 101.
With the recent cases against 3 of the major television networks, we have been hearing the term news distortion. Some may say this is just a new buzzword with the current administration. In fact, the FCC has had a news distortion policy for the past 5 decades. According to the agency, news distortion must involve a significant event and not merely a minor or incidental aspect of the news report. Under the policy, enforcement can only take place if it can be proven that the broadcaster has deliberately distorted a factual news report. Expressions of opinion or errors stemming from a mistake are not actionable. The FCC's authority to enforce the news distortion policy only extends to whatever goes over the air of a licensed radio or TV broadcast station and does not extend to cable networks, social media, blogs, video streaming, or other non-broadcast news platforms. The FCC advises consumers to first report concerns to the broadcaster, and if the complainant is not satisfied with the broadcaster's response, they can file a complaint with the FCC. The FCC will only investigate claims showing that the broadcast news report was deliberately intended to mislead viewers or listeners. Evidence may include testimony from persons who have direct and personal knowledge of an intentional falsification of the news. The FCC does not investigate claims of collateral inaccuracy in news reports or differences of opinion over the truth or validity of aspects of a news program. REC recommends that any station receiving such a complaint should retain a qualified attorney for assistance. This past week, S315, the AM Radio in Every Vehicle Act, has advanced through the Senate's Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. Ranking member Maria Cantwell, Democrat from Washington State.
I represent a state prone to natural disasters. I don't know what to say, whether it's Mount St. Helens, whether it's the fires I just mentioned, unbelievable flooding given the big storms that we're hit with. And I like the notion that we are going to have good old-fashioned ham radio and car radios. I just think that we need to continue to have emergency response for people and think outside the box of how to skill that. Now, you think, well, that doesn't sound, well, go read the article that somebody wrote called The Big One. Is the big one going to hit the Pacific Northwest? Are we going to be at a point where we're going to be devastated from a grand implosion volcano experience that might just cause a lahar from Mount Rainier? The consequences are as devastating as some of the major events in the Louisiana and the South. So I hope that we will do something that thinks outside the box on how to keep communication going and not just respond to some of the requests by people that think that the digital solution is just the only solution.
Under this law, auto manufacturers would be required to have radios that receive AM broadcasts available on the dashboard at no charge. REC Networks had issued a public statement opposing the law as written, citing the so-called digital loophole. This loophole allows car makers to comply with the law by only including a radio that receives AM stations operating in hybrid HD radio. The website HD Radio Directory, which independently tracks digital broadcasting using the Xperi system, states that only 27 AM stations are currently broadcasting in HD. Many AM stations that originally operated the system had discontinued their HD operations in light of adjacent channel interference, especially at night. REC further states that the public alerting benefit of this bill is not very effective, as emergency alerts are available on both AM and FM radio stations. REC supports a more general legislation that requires car makers to assure that both AM and FM radio will remain freely available on vehicle dashboards for model years to come. On Tuesday, the Commission, in a 3-1 vote, has adopted a notice of apparent liability in the amount of $4,492,500 against Telnyx, LLC, for government imposter robocalls made over its network. While several agencies have been the subject of such calls, this time it was a little closer to home for the agency. The agency reports that over a dozen FCC staff and family members received an automated message from the Federal Communications Fraud Prevention Team. When connected to the scammer, the caller was given a demand to pay the FCC $1,000 in Google gift cards in order to avoid jail time for their crimes against the state. Under Section 64.1200N4 of the rules, rules, voice service providers are required to know their customers and take effective measures to prevent new and renewing customers from using its network to originate illegal calls and exercising due diligence to ensure that their services are not used to originate illegal traffic. Commissioner Symington dissented in this proceeding, stating that while the conduct described in this NAL is particularly egregious and certainly worth enforcement action, he continues to believe that the Supreme Court decision on SEC versus JARCSI, where the court ruled that a federal agency cannot force defendants into administrative proceedings without a jury trial. Like with any NAL, Telnyx has 30 days to pay the forfeiture or fight it. A consent decree was reached in the matter of Minority Television Project, licensee of KMTP-TV, San Francisco, California. The decree resolves violations of the Online Public Inspection File Rule, providing complete responses on applications and for the late filing of the renewal application. KMTP will pay a $25,000 civil penalty.
You really think you can get any disc jockeys to play my song?
It's getting tougher, but I'm on my way to see one right now.
Oh boy.
Right after I stop off at the bank.
The old Payola roll blues.
What kind of crack is that? That's an insult to my integrity.
Nobody liked the late, great Stan Freberg. The FCC has released an enforcement advisory reminding radio stations about the Payola law. The Payola law prohibits broadcast stations and station personnel from receiving payment in exchange for the airplay of music without any sponsorship identification given. This advisory appears to have been triggered by a letter sent to Chairman Carr from Senator Marsha Blackburn, Republican from Tennessee. In that letter, Blackburn states that stations are attempting to sidestep the Payola law by demanding that artists perform free live radio shows, also referred to as listener appreciation shows or charitable concert events. Radio stations and networks often receive the financial benefit of these shows through ticket sales, sponsorship, and other income, while the artists and record labels frequently absorb the expense. Failure to comply with Section 317 of the Communications Act and Section 73.1212B of the FCC rules could lead to administrative sanctions, including forfeiture. On Thursday, the FCC has released the tentative agenda for the next open meeting on Thursday, February 27. On the agenda, the FCC will consider an NPRM to update the Advanced Wireless Service, or AWS-3, service-specific bidding rules to bring them in line with current practice and to initiate an auction for AWS-3 spectrum by June 23, 2026. The FCC will consider a notice of inquiry exploring how they could free up additional mid-band spectrum in the upper C-band to meet projected spectrum demand, spur economic growth, and advance American security interests. The FCC will consider a report and order and further notice of proposed rulemaking intended to give emergency managers and consumers greater customization of the wireless emergency alerts that they send and receive. The FCC will also consider items related to strengthening call blocking and combating loud commercial advertisements. FCC meetings are held at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time at FCC headquarters. FCC meetings are live streamed at fcc.gov/live. FCC Today, the podcast, is available on the Michelle Bradley YouTube channel. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also catch it at Podbean, on the REC Network Substack, and wherever you get your podcasts. Keep up with everything going on at the Media Bureau at fcc.today. For assistance with full service and low-power FM and FM translators, contact REC Networks at 202-621-2355. FCC Today, the podcast, has been a production of REC Networks, devoted to a diverse style, common sense regulation, and preserving the relevance of this wonderful medium we call radio. I'm Michelle Bradley, SBE Certified Broadcast Technologist. Thank you for listening.